right, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Natalie Villa, and I'm a project manager here at CaFÉ. In today's webinar, we're going to be talking about data collection and artist management for CaFÉ admins. So today we'll be covering how the artist side of CaFÉ speaks to the administrator side, what kind of data is being sent from the artist profile, how to manage this information, and where you can pull it necessarily. Before we get started with the webinar, we have a couple of housekeeping items. As I said before, if you have any questions about things that I'm discussing or going over throughout the webinar, feel free to throw any of those questions into the chat window on the left-hand side. If you have questions more specific about maybe your call or the system in general, it might be better to send those questions to CaFÉ Help, and a member of the CaFÉ team can respond to those directly. I'll be sharing my screen throughout the webinar, so feel free to take notes as we move along. And then a recording of this webinar will be sent to you all once it's made available. So the key items that we're going to cover today include the artist account information and where that information is pulled in, the artist portfolio and what information CaFÉ is already collecting, a brief look at the call editor and how this translates to the call listings and the information that you put out for your artist, and then the artist application and management of those applications. So we're going to go ahead and start with the call editor, which I'm logged into the administrator side right now. And we'll go ahead and choose our event. Jump right into this call editor. So the call editor is where you're going to set up all of your general rules, information about your event, and also set up the application questions. This first tab we're on is the event information. And this is where you're going to really want to outline the details about your call to kind of encourage artists to apply to your event. The beginning part of the top part of this page is where you're really going to fill out those searchable items for your call. So that's the call type, eligibility, city, and state. All of those are going to be searchable on the artist side, and I'll head over to there shortly to let you see what that kind of looks like. Keep in mind that these pages are going to be visible both to logged in and logged out users, so it's important that you kind of tailor this information to be clear and concise so that anyone who's looking at the information can get an idea of what your call is about. So this first part, the short description, is really intended to describe your call and provide an overview of what it is. It's going to be a little more salesy because the goal of the short description is to get artists to read your full call description and hopefully apply to your call. So keep in mind that this is pulled into that call listings page, the first default page, but not necessarily pulled into your full event information page. And again, I will show you what that looks like so that you can kind of see how this information feeds on that artist side and how you can tailor it for your specific call. The call type, the eligibility, city, state, and organization are all going to be searchable things for the artist. So it's really important that you have your organization listed as how you have it on your website or how your artists have come to know it. Or if you're similar to CaFÉ, where we would maybe put in CaFÉ as our organization instead of call for entry so that people can easily find this call or the call specific to your organization. It's important that your short description is no longer than 1,000 characters. Not only does this feed into the call listing page, but this also pulls into our biweekly email. So we try to keep it short, and it will cut off slightly on the artist side if you have it too long. All right, so we're going to go on over to the artist side, and we're going to look for my call that I was showing you on the administrator side. And I've made my call a hidden call since we want only CaFÉ team to apply. All right, so on this very first page, this call listings page is accessible to both public and not public users, so people who are logged in and not logged in. And you'll see that information that I had mentioned pulls into this page right here. Also, down below, you'll have this short description that should be no longer than 1,000 characters. So again, this is that first brief introduction for an artist to see what they want from your call. If we go into the more info page or your call detail page, you'll see that the short description is no longer included. And that's because that long description on the call editor is actually included and provides a lot more overview of this application or your event. At the top of the page, you'll also notice that the artists have access to the email that you listed. So you'll want to make sure that that email is representing the one that the artist can contact for help with any questions about this event or about the rules specific to your to how you're hosting your call. And then down below in the long description, this is really where you want to outline the overview of your call. You want to call attention to any timelines, project details, requirements, if there are any additional fees. It also is beneficial to include any rules that you have associated with your call. This could be things like your refund policy, shipping information, any of that kind of information that the artist might need to know before they actually apply to your call. And before any artists are able to start the application, they do have to agree to your legal agreement. So on this administrator side, if I show you, there's a section where you would enter your legal agreement. And this is going to be terms or conditions that you want an artist to agree to before they can actually start that application. So again, if you have that long description outlining the rules and information, if there are any things that you want them to agree to before they actually move on to that application, you would list that here. And then the artist, if they were to click the apply button, would be directed to that legal agreement page where they would have to agree before they can move on and continue on that application. So before we continue on to the application on the artist side, we'll go ahead jumping back to the administrator side, and we'll look at how you build out these questions. So that's going to be on that second tab of the call editor in the application editor. And here is where you're going to have the options to build out custom questions that you want, and the artist statement collect categories, and you'll also be able to review the range or images media that you are accepting. So the first part we'll talk about is the artist statement and the categories editor. So both of these are optional fields that you can decide if you want to activate and continue to use. So if you do the artist statement, this will be the first question on the application page, and you have the little toggle to activate or disable it. Choose your character limit, including spaces. So how long do you want this to be? And then any additional instructions that you might want for your artist. So maybe, we'll have a broad question for them, but if you have something more tailored you're looking for, you can add those questions here. The categories editor is intended to help you kind of organize your application. So it will flip these applications based on the categories that they select. So you can have different medium disciplines, you could have maybe member, non-member type categories. It's up to you, and it's totally optional, and you don't have to use it if it's not applicable for yours. And then finally, we have these custom questions. So here's where you would actually build out your questions for your artist to answer. One of the things that this webinar is intended to do is hopefully help you kind of figure out which questions you need to actually include and which ones we're already including this data, so you no longer have to create them. We have 6 types of questions that you can choose from, and it would be the text, checkbox, or multi-select, the radio button, or a single selection type question, the drop-down menu, a file upload, and information only. So here in our example, you'll see that we have 2 types of questions, a text one for a bio, and then a file upload for a resume. If you go into your question, you can see right here, this is an internal title that we would be using for just kind of keeping track of what question is which. But here is the actual space or information that the artist would see in the question, and I'll show you what that looks like on the application. This priority really represents the order in which you want the application questions to appear. And then any help information. So with file upload, for example, in this question, this general information will always be included because these are the requirements that CaFÉ automatically sets. So if we jump back now to the artist side, I will agree to my terms and conditions. And you'll see on this side, the artist, they will have 2 kind of sections. So here at the top is the form question, and that's going to be based on what you built out. So we'll see that category, the statement question, that bio, and then the ability for me to choose file. If I click this orange question mark, that will give me that help information that I included. So if you had any specific help information here, this would appear there. So that is the form question. One of the things that we see a lot happening within our form questions is, contact information and specific information about that artist. Well, before we go back to the call editor, we'll jump ahead to the artist profile. So when artists join CaFÉ, they have to complete a registration form, and it looks much like my profile page right here. Here we'll see all of the contact information that they have to enter before they can create the profile. Here is where artists will update their contact information, update their profile notification preferences, and then update their login information. So we already collect their first and last name, address, city, state, country, zip code, phone number, preferred method of contact, email, website information. And then if they have a team or associates that they work with, they can start to list those first and last names of those partners. So it's important to note that because you no longer need to create a custom question that says, please provide your website. If they include that in their profile information, it will automatically be pulled towards the administrator side. So if I go to one of my applications within my call, this is our first one. If I click this ID number within the table, it's going to take me to this, what is called the artist citation or the application preview. So this is what when a submitted application comes through, this is what you can review and see where all this information is. So at the top of the review, you will see the contact information. And this is all of that information that the artist submitted when they first registered and were required to enter. So as long as it's not any kind of contact information outside of what I just showed you, you can create a custom question. If it's something within that, it might be a little more duplicative than you need. Along with this contact information, you can also go to the events management section. And if you were to select your status of artist, so we'll choose receive. And at the very top, kind of toward the right-hand side over here, we have this download XLSX. So what this is really going to do is download a spreadsheet of the artist information for that status. So if we were to click contact information, you would get a spreadsheet of all the contact information for this group of artists. So over here, where I've already downloaded it, and we will see these contact information. So all of that information that they put in their profile, again, is downloadable and accessible to you in a spreadsheet form, which is really helpful as you continue to build out your own contact information. Another report that is important to note is this application answers. So similarly, it will download a spreadsheet of all of the answers for those custom questions that you created in your application. So again, it will be for that group of artists, and it will come into a spreadsheet. Within that application answers, you get some general contact information. So we have, email, phone, discipline, but then we have the artist statement and the artist bio. One thing to note is if you do have a file upload question, it will list the name of the file, but it won't actually give you access to that. You would have to go in to the application directly and download that file from within each artist preview. Similarly to what we see a lot of within the application editor, we often see some kind of file upload question asking for artwork. The great thing about CaFÉ is you don't have to create those custom questions. Instead, the system will automatically do that. And that is going to be based on this range or images media selection, essentially. So when you all submit your call editor, your new call request, you are asked to provide the range of images or range of media that you want to accept. So the range of media that you submit in your call request is what we kind of funnel in here. And then we ask you to verify that that media is correct, because that does play a large part on the application side. So for example, this is not editable to you, but we are able to update this at any point before you go live. So as long as your call is not published, we can make those edits for you. So in this example, we are accepting a minimum of 1 image. So artists must submit at least 1 image, and they have a maximum of 6. And then I'm also allowing them to submit audio and video, but though you'll see the minimum is 0, so that means that it's no longer required. But the total overall media, they must submit at least 1 file, which would be that 1 image, and they have the ability to submit up to 6 files. So looking at this, we'll go ahead and jump to the artist side and go back into that application that I started. Sorry, I did not hit save, so I did not. So below that form question section in the application, we'll have this choose work samples. And what it will display is at the bottom, I will be able to see anything I've uploaded to my portfolio, which I will kind of show you in just one second. And then I will be able to see those requirements that I can see as an administrator as well as an artist. So I'll see that minimum 1, that maximum 6, minimum 0, and then the total medium. So it kind of will tell me, and then if I don't, let's say, for example, I hit this save application before selecting any media, the system will not let me move forward. Instead, it will tell me I have to choose these samples. So this is a great way to have a fail-safe before you without creating those files, those custom questions directly. We also collect specific data for each of these artworks. So if I were to click on this link right here, we'll go to this media preview. And you'll see on the right-hand side of the thumbnail image, I have specific information that I have included for this artwork. And this is because when artists actually go to upload their artworks, they are required to fill in this information. So we will go to portfolio. And the artist portfolio really acts as a library, so artists can upload all the media that they want, and then just when they actually choose or attach it to the application, that's when you will see it. So if we were to click this Upload Media button, we'll see on this page there are required fields that I must complete before I can actually upload that file. And so for an image, that would include an artwork title, medium, the dimensions of the artwork, the price or value, and if there's not a price or it's not for sale, we encourage artists to put 0 in this field since it is required, and then just make a note of that in the description. So you may have seen that before where you see a 0 in your price value, but then in the description they're noting that it's not for sale. The year that the artwork was completed, and then these optional fields down below. So the optional fields include the primary discipline, if this art is a public art, and if it's in a public place, and then what would that location be? So if I toggle to yes, there's some more information that we can get for that. And then a short description of their artwork up to about 300 characters. So they'll be required to enter all of that information. And then if they were to submit an audio file, very similar. They have the title, the format or medium, the copy format or medium, the duration of that audio file. The price and value is optional here, but the year completed is required. So there's some additional, again, optional fields that they can complete, but those bolded fields would be required. And then finally, for video, we have very similar file sections, the title, the format, and the duration, and then the year completed. One thing I'd like to know on the video and audio is this artist's website. It doesn't necessarily have to be a website, but maybe if the file that they were trying to upload doesn't meet within CaFÉ requirements, they could always direct administrators and jurors to go view their full length maybe on YouTube and put that YouTube link here. So it's a good way to get to meet the requirement on CaFÉ, but maybe direct them to another place. So then if we're back into that application on the artist side, when I go into the application and I choose to attach or select these images, all of this information will be submitted to the administrator when I complete the application. So any details I've entered will appear. And so we'll go ahead and jump now to the administrator side to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. Once again, I'm going to go back into my group of artists, which is the receive status, and click on that ID. So if I'm on this artist citation or artist review page, if I jump all the way down to the bottom of the group, I'll see this art section. And I would see this general information for the artwork. If I click on the thumbnail, it'll take me to another page where I see that same information, but a little more detail of what they have. And you can click on the enlarge view right here. All of this information, too, can be seen by the juror, and you would control what information you would like them to see. So there are some toggles within that juror administration page when you're setting up that jury that you can actually choose what should be displayed to your jurors. So all of this information will be accessible not only to you, but also to your jurors. And here's that jury permission. So anything that would be selected would be hidden from your jurors. So if you don't want them to maybe see the year or the price of the artwork, you could always hide those fields. Since we collect all this information for you, we also have a couple reports that you can download for that media-specific information. So again, back on this group, on this events management page, if you go on over to download XLSX, we would have a media information spreadsheet. So I will jump over to my saved one. And here what we would see is the artist's name, the application ID, and then the sample type. So for example, this one is a video, but I have all the information that they would have entered when they completed the form. So not, they wouldn't have had to do the height, width, and depth, but they would have had these other sections to complete. So all of this information is downloadable again in a spreadsheet for you to use as you need. We also have a media PDF inventory. So back on this administrator side, if we were to go to the PDF section, you have a media inventory list. And so this is very similar to the spreadsheet with the exception that it does include a small thumbnail. So maybe as you're going through and setting up things and you want to kind of keep track of different art pieces, this might be a better option because it does have that thumbnail version for you. And it includes a lot of that same information. And then finally, one of the things that we have available to all the administrators on CaFÉ is the ability to request these images, the full high-res version of these images. So you can request up to 3 downloads per call, and then we encourage you to put in that request once you're kind of finished reviewing all the applications, and you can then really clearly tell us. What it will do is when you put in that request, we will send you a zip file that will have a download of all of the images by status. So you get to tell us whether you want maybe all of your invited artists, you want a group of invited and not invited. You tell us what group of artists you want. And then within the download, it'll be structured that each status will have a folder. And then within the folder will be categories if you have that enabled. And then within that will be the images. We can also attach last names, so that can kind of help you in your organization internally. So that's kind of a general overview of the profile and portfolio information that we're already collecting and hopefully will help guide your application questions as you continue to build them. So we'll jump back now to the administrator side. And so we've been doing a lot of management from this events management page, and that's what it's intended to do. So one of the things I wanted to call out is on this left-hand side, we can see a group of, or the number of applications. So one thing to keep in mind here, though, is if you have an application or an event that is jury by artwork, this number is really going to represent the number of artwork images, because in the system, if you have jury by artwork set and you're accepting 1 to 3 images, it will split out each of those images into one application so that your juror can assign a score per image. So this is important to keep in mind. So if it said, let's say you are accepting, you have a call that's jury by artwork and you're asking artists to submit 2 images. The applications the system would break it out. And so if you had 100 artists who submitted, you would see instead the 100 applications, you would see 200. And you just have to kind of keep that in mind because this may not actually be the full number of artists, but rather the number of applications depending on your setting. Once an application has been submitted on the artist side, the system will move it to the received status. So you'll always see any applications automatically move to the received status. At this point, once you have applications in the received, it is up to you to kind of organize them how you want. And so this statuses table is a list of all of the possible statuses that you can use. And really on our help page, if you were to go to the help, we have this guide for submitted applications. And that will, within that, we have a breakdown of the statuses and how you can use them to maybe meet your needs. It's up to each organization to use the statuses as they want, but this kind of gives a great overview of what information or what these statuses are typically used and how the artists have come to know that they are used. So in order to review any of the applications, it would do the same process that we've kind of been intermingling, but we would click on the group of artists and we'd click on that ID. So this is really going to be your friend, this artist citation page or application review. Again, at the top, you will see that contact information, event-specific data, which is really the important part of this little section is that status. You can always kind of keep track of what status you're reviewing or what application, where this application is. These custom answers, again, you'll see any answers to any of the questions that you created, as well as the ability to download those files that you've asked people to upload. Below that, you will see any payment information. So if you had an entry fee, or even if you don't have an entry fee, we do track all of that information and you'll see it here. If you were to have an entry fee, you might see some additional details of maybe their payment method and the total cost of that. If you had sent any emails to your group of artists, this would be listed here. So if you send a group to your received artists, thanking them for submitting the application and providing maybe next steps as far as the jury process, that would display here and you can confirm that you sent it to the correct email because it would be the email associated with the account. You can also review that email to kind of see what information you sent. So it kind of keeps a historical record for any emails that you sent through the CaFÉ system. And then down below, you would see that artist statement, the medium category, and then the general information for your the artwork that you collected. At the very bottom, there's a little more information around, or a little more management information for you. So you can create tags to kind of help you organize your artists. And these are internal tags that don't display to your artist. It's just kind of an internal note for you to help. So maybe I wanted to know that this artist is an award winner. I can add a tag that says award, save it, and it'll display here. And then back on the events management table, I'll show you that we can actually sort or filter by those tags that you create. Below that, we also have the ability to change that status. So maybe as you are reviewing your applications to ensure that people met the requirements that you asked, you want to change this status to reviewed so that you can kind of keep track again. You can hit save, and then they will move to the reviewed status. One thing about status management, the artist can see the movement that you do. So if you want to do movement kind of maybe without having them know that, maybe you're reviewing them, you might change that jury status to in progress because then the artist will only see jury in progress and not the status movement that you're doing. So within this events management page, we can click on the heading and the system or the page will reload and we will see it'll sort by ascending order. So can I just sort again? We see this tag here. If I were to show tagged applicants only, I would only see the applicants with tags. So it's just a good way to, again, keep yourself organized. Finally, one last thing that I'd like to note is that on this events management, you have two other options, which is to add a comment. So again, these comments will not be shared with the artist. They are just internal. So maybe you wanted to make another note instead of a tag, you wanted to note here in the comments that this person is an award winner. You can add it here. The edit button works as a save. And then you would be able to see that comment and update as necessary. The final really helpful management piece here is this status history. And what this does is it really gives you an overview of what the artist movement was through the various statuses. So for example, we can see that this artist started the application on January 8th. They moved to ready for submission that same day, so they completed the application within moments of each other. And then they submitted just a little bit later when they moved to received. And then finally, we can see up at the very last two that the administrator or myself moved the artist to the reviewed status and then back to the received status. So if you ever have a question about who moved someone to invited or who moved someone to accepted status, this might be a good way to track that information. Okay, so that is really the information that we wanted to cover and just kind of show you how the artist side is talking to the administrator side. Thank you for joining us, and be sure to join our next webinar in February. Thanks.